Greetings and salutations, loyal viewers of this channel. My name is Sean, and today we got to talk about yet another Department of Justice lawsuit, this time against the South Bend Police Department, alleging discrimination against both minorities and females due to the fact that they have a moderately challenging physical fitness exam and another written exam that honestly is kind of absurd that this is considered to be discriminatory. This is a part of a pattern of behavior from Merrick Garland's Justice Department to weaken the police department and make them hire, I guess, obese minority females, and it seems to me that this is one of the more ridiculous maneuvers, and yet we see it again in South Bend. Now, we're going to get into this, but before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay.
And remind you that Wednesday, October 23rd, I will be live in person in the city of New York debating Joshua Eagle, who is going to try to make the argument that libertarians should vote for Kamala Harris, and it's going to be an absolutely amazing event. Please register for this event if you're in and around the area. I believe it is in fact free. There's an open bar afterwards. I'd love to meet and greet with all of you. I know you're in the area, so let's just get this done. Now, without further ado, let's get into the topic of today's video.
With the city of South Bend and its police department under the federal microscope tonight. Just hours ago, the Justice Department accusing the South Bend Police Department of discriminating against black and female police officer job applicants. Again, these allegations coming straight from the feds tonight.
Now, needless to say, on this channel, we are obviously against unjustified discrimination. The idea that because of somebody's race, gender, sex, whatever you want to call it, sexual orientation, that they would not be hired on for a specific job. I think we can all move past that point in time where we're just judging people based on the color of their skin. However, while you and I might hold that position, those of you out there in my audience, the Department of Justice completely does not hold that position. They believe that any type of exam, whether it be physical or a basic written test that has unequal outcomes, is by its very nature discriminatory, so much in the same way that they went after the Maryland state troopers, who, by the way, yielded to the commands of the Department of Justice. They are going after South Bend right now. And to be clear, the South Bend Police Department is a police department, so their physical exam is actually much easier than the state troopers' physical exam, just because of the differences between a local police department and a state agency like the state troopers in any state in the union. You will often see on youtube.com state troopers versus United States Marines. You are never going to see the police department in your local area be even eligible to compete with the Marines in anything, because they're just not that physically demanding positions, because they require a partner, and state troopers are oftentimes tasked with protecting the governor and acting alone by themselves, which is why they need to be more physically demanding. However, that being said, even with this less stressful test, the Department of Justice has decided that it's evil sexism that women can't do it.
Well, the DOJ takes issue with the written exam and a physical fitness test the department uses in the hiring process. Both are pass-fail, do-or-die components, and both allegedly violate the Civil Rights Act. The department's physical fitness test includes a vertical jump, sit-ups, push-ups, a 300-meter run, a mile-and-a-half run, and a pistol trigger pull. This video shows former WNDU employee Alex Almanza being put through the paces for demonstration purposes.
So right off the top, you can see in this local news segment, they're showing you clips of one of their own reporters going through the physical fitness requirements to be a South Bend police officer. And as you can see, by comparison to the state trooper exam that we went over, this is not as physically demanding. Sure, it has push-ups, a vertical leap, and a run, but the runs are actually significantly shorter. And unlike the state troopers exam that I showed you, which was a video from years back, it had advanced beyond that, and there are no breaks in between any of these activities. However, even with this lighter physical fitness test, it turns out women are disproportionately failing this, and this, according to the Department of Justice, is a major issue, is a major problem, which honestly, for me, there has to be some level of physicality to our police officers, and you're going to end up in situations where women end up getting beat up by criminals or result to pulling out their guns more often because of the physical match, and that is not a good outcome. But that's what the Department of Justice is pushing for, because ideologically they want to weaken our police departments, and again, ideologically they are against merit to its core.
As for those who were playing for keeps, from 2016 through August 2019, the suit alleges 87.6% of male physical fitness test takers passed, while only 45.5% of women made the grade. The suit further asserts the physical fitness test is not job-related or consistent with business necessity, and that alternative selection procedures could have been used that had less adverse impact against female applicants.
So right there, you saw the breakdown of the numbers, and it is very important for you guys to understand that this is the basis of the lawsuit in terms of gender discrimination, which is that this physical fitness exam, which is pass or fail, is not necessary to be a police officer. And again, think about what you heard. You had a little bit of sit-ups, a little bit of push-ups, a vertical leap. Maybe the vertical leap is not necessary, but you had a run of 300 meters and then a run of 1.3 miles, which, considering police officers are likely to engage in some kind of foot pursuit, especially early on when they're on foot patrol, seems like it's rather relevant. On top of that, you had the trigger pull section of this. I don't think that you being able to use your firearm appropriately and efficiently is not related to your duties as being a police officer, but the Department of Justice says you need to find an alternative to this that will better sufficiently describe the roles of being a police officer. And to me, this is just an absurdity on top of an absurdity. Again, it's not even that difficult, and it's not even that surprising that we would see females pass a physical fitness exam at half the rate of the males. The males are just under 90%. The females are just above 45%. This is comparably much easier than the state exam that we talked about in Maryland, because again, the police department in South Bend already has lower standards than that state agency. Yet what we see time and time again is that the far left in the Department of Justice in their Civil Rights Division is committed to lowering the standards to be a police officer, and when you get worse results from officers, they will then use that as a justification to defund the police, to punish police departments and cities and everyday citizens by letting the criminals run roughshod over our society.
The suit then takes issue with the written exam the department uses in the hiring process. Since 2016, 84.1% of white test takers passed compared to 62.8% of African Americans.
Now, of course, there is the written exam, because this is not only a gender-based discrimination lawsuit, but it's also a race-based discrimination lawsuit, and the Department of Justice is making the case that the same test given to blacks and whites is somehow inherently discriminatory to black people because they're passing it at a significantly lower rate. Now, I will point out that 84% to 64% is not unusual in the country. In fact, if you look at the achievement gap in our K through 12 education, this is something to be expected, and honestly, maybe the written test appears too easy from this actual view of it. But the fact of the matter is, once again, when we examine the questions of the test, which we will, it turns out that these questions aren't difficult at all, and the best argument that the DOJ can make is that maybe some of these basic skills, basic levels of education are not related to your job as a police officer, even though some of the questions are filling out police reports and basic information like that.
Our investigation found that Maryland State Police's hiring practices for entry-level troopers violated Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibits employment discrimination based on race, sex, color, national origin, or religion. The old hiring tests that prompted the investigation here did not distinguish between candidates who could successfully perform the job of a trooper and those who could not. This made the test not just ineffective, but unlawful.
Now, like I said, even though for the Department of Justice in that Maryland case, that was the best argument that they had, so by extension, they probably have their best argument over here, I do want to point out that we should look at these questions that are supposedly so filled with evil white racism that black people, 4 in 10 of them, just can't compete, and it's just not fair. It's just so racist and embarrassing that there's no way that we could ever expect this basic written test to be put forward for officers in any city in this country. So the first question is, Officer Milton visits local area businesses as a part of a theft prevention program. If Officer Milton visits 3 business areas every week, except for his 3-week vacation, how many groups does he visit in 1 year? Now look, at its core, this question is a basic mathematical question. There are 52 weeks in a year. This guy gets a 3-week vacation. So 52 minus 3 equals 49, and 49 times 3, because he's visiting 3 distinct areas per week, ends up getting you the result of 147. Now, I will point out that that is incredibly easy, incredibly simple. Anybody should be able to do that math that is an adult in the United States of America. And considering when you go to university and you want to specialize in a field like nursing or something that's not necessarily related to general education, as a requirement to get that degree, you have to fill out GE credits. To me, calling this discrimination in the context of a police department makes no sense at all. But let us move on beyond that basic subtraction and multiplication program, because maybe, just maybe, you'll be able to spot the evil white racism in only a moment. So the next question says, in preparing a report on burglary in a dentist's office, Sergeant Kramer listed the following stolen items and their values: a digital camera at $810, a laptop computer at $650, a printer at $325, and of course a paper shredder at $125. Now, based on this information, it asks you what is the total value of the stolen goods. And you should get the answer D, 1910, because it's basic addition. However, I do want to point out that unlike the Maryland written exam with their mathematical problems, you actually do have answers here meant to trip you up, meant to make it more difficult. So I give credit where credit is due for them being a little bit harder than maybe that 3rd grade math test that we got in Maryland. This is all the way up to 4th grade, and not just 4th grade on day 1, but 4th grade on at least day 3. Now, the next question asks for what is the value of all the stolen goods except for the paper shredder. And since the paper shredder is 125 and you subtract 125 from 1910, you get an answer of 1785. Now again, to give some credit to this test for being a little bit more difficult, making it all the way to 4th grade math, you do have answers that are the same as the other answers in the previous question that you can subtract 125, so you can end up getting both of these questions wrong. That being said, is this too much to ask for a police officer, this basic mathematical question? Is it too much to ask for somebody who might be filling out a burglary report to be able to add up the amount of stolen goods on said report, or what are being reported stolen to that police officer? I think not. I think this is basic, logical, and reasonable. However, I do want to point out that after I got my own vehicle stolen, when I had to fill out the report, they did make me do all the math on my own. So maybe, just maybe, it's too much for certain police departments to be able to do this math, check the numbers, do the addition, and then maybe, just maybe, do a little bit of subtraction after the fact. So let me know what you think about this down in the comments below. But let's move on to the next mathematical question. During a 5-day period, Officer Fernandez drove his patrol motorcycle 225 miles. If he drove 85 miles in one day, how many miles did he average on each of the other days? Now, this question maybe gets a little bit more complicated. Maybe we've moved up all the way to 5th grade level in terms of the math requirements, or even 6th grade level, God forbid, because you have to do some subtraction and then follow that up with some division. But it's actually incredibly easy to assess the answer to this question. And by the way, the way that they would tell you to figure it out in school is subtract 85 from 225, which would get you the number 160. Then you divide by 4, and then you end up with 40. But if you already understand that you're subtracting 85 from the total 225, you know that the answer should end in 0. Now, because of that, you can eliminate 2 answers right off the jump that end in 5, but in addition to that, you should be able to assess with common sense and reasoning that it's not going to be 140 miles, so that leaves you with 2 answers. And obviously, for my opinion, the most reasonable answer is going to be 40. Even if you're not very good at math, you should be able to assess that as fact. And considering that officers are required to log the miles that they drive per day, this might be something that comes into play, although you can argue that maybe, just maybe, it doesn't. Now, the next question is also a division question. It says, burglars broke into an electronics store and left with 30 global navigation systems with a total retail value of $6,750. What is the average retail value of each of the navigation systems? Now, the answer to this question is A, and in my opinion, this is also not that difficult of a question for you to be able to solve. You just take the number 30, you divide it into 6,750, and you end up with the answer A, 225. On top of that, if you remember your elementary school math tips, one of the things that you can do, since both of these numbers end in 0, is actually lop off the 0 on both sides, do 3 into 675, and then add in the decimal point move at the end of the equation. So if you like the number smaller, you can make the number smaller for your convenience for this particular math program. But again, the simplicity of this equation ends up bringing up what I think is the most important question, which is, where's the evil white racism? Where is it? Do you guys see it? Do you guys feel the discrimination pouring through this test? Because I certainly don't. Now look, there are written questions that are meant to assess your ability to read a paragraph, get a bunch of information, and break down the most important crucial parts of said information. I'm not really going to get so much into that, but you also have questions related to what the amendments to the Constitution do, which in my opinion, when they give you an explanation of the amendment right next to the amendment, should be far too easy for a police officer exam. They should be able to ask you without multiple choice, what is the importance of the Fifth Amendment, so you can get an answer from your officers, but they don't even make it that difficult. Now, they also have questions where they give you information and they ask you to put it on a police report, much in the same way that you would be told this information as an officer on the beat, but for whatever reason, this is considered to be evil white racism by the Justice Department.
The suit seeks a court order to ensure South Bend uses only lawful tests in hiring, and it seeks relief for harmed female and black applicants, including back pay and job offers with retroactive seniority.
Now, just think about how crazy that is. The goal of the Department of Justice lawsuit is not only to get these people back pay, which again, you would be entitled to if you had a legitimate discrimination case, but they are also asking them to hire these people who haven't been cops, some of them for years, because apparently this test dates back to 2016, with the seniority that they would have earned, which again, I'm guessing is based solely on the fact that they're saying this many white applicants would have earned seniority at this point. Therefore, these many black and female applicants should be granted those senior positions. So not only are you trying to get these people paid based on what I think is a bogus lawsuit, not only are you trying to get these people hired, which again, maybe you could argue that they could be fine as entry-level officers working their way up, but instead you want them to be sergeants and all these higher ranks with higher pay, so that way they can be on the beat without any of the necessary experience, sometimes years worth of missing experience in those positions. To me, that's absolutely crazy. I mean, what if they decide that one of these people would have been a detective based out of nothing, and they end up inserting that person onto the homicide team, and that's the person investigating your murder, somebody who only got the job years later after they've already moved on with their life, based on the fact that the Department of Justice considered this basic math and reasoning test to be evil white racism.
The Department of Justice says the law prohibits not only intentional discrimination, but also employment practices that produce a disparity on a protected group. The matter now pending in U.S. District Court in South Bend.
Yeah, again, this is one of the major problems with the disparate outcome standard. Now, you can make the case that intentional discrimination, bad, it's not good, no bueno, sure, fine, whatever. But the fact of the matter is, you having basic standards that apply to everyone, but leading to an unequal outcome is considered disparate outcome discrimination, which in my mind, 99.9% of the time is just rooted in an inherent falsehood. The idea that we would expect everybody from across all racial groups to perform identically absent discrimination is what Thomas Sowell calls the great fallacy, because there are vast differences even within racial groups in performances on things like standardized tests and physical fitness.
We'll see what happens, but a lot of questions for sure. Mark, we appreciate you really, as they say, dumbing it down, allowed us to understand exactly what's happening here in federal court. Thank you, Mark.
So the irony of this guy saying that he thanks the news presenter for dumbing this down so that they can understand it on the local news is not lost on me, because what the Department of Justice is actually arguing for is a dumbing down of the test, is a dumbing down, so to speak, of the physical test. And for me, I'm just not about this. I don't need more out of shape female cops of minority origin, because that doesn't make me feel better. Having police officers that are actually capable of doing the job both physically and mentally should be the goal across this country.
Start with the city's top cop, Scott Ruskowski. He said in part, "I am beyond disappointed that the DOJ has not been forthcoming with how these claims are determined in the first place. Our hiring process, which includes females and African-American applicants, has been consistent over the last 10 years and led to an increasingly diverse department, especially over the past several years." End quote. Again, that's partially part of his quote there. It's a much more extensive one, too. We want to go now to Mayor James Mueller. Here's what he said in part. "Our police department has worked diligently to increase the number of officers from underrepresented groups and to follow the letter and spirit of Indiana and federal law. Now, although the cost of this targeted litigation will be borne by federal and local taxpayers, the city will not voluntarily agree to federal control. We hope that common sense will prevail during the judicial process."
So you have both the top cop and the mayor saying that there's no discrimination here. The Department of Justice has been hiding in shadow, and they're not making it clear what exactly is discriminatory in this complaint. But that's kind of the point. They're saying that anything that leads to a disparate outcome, whether it be a physical fitness exam for male and females or a basic test in terms of minorities versus non-minorities, is the discrimination. That is the issue. The outcome, the equality of outcome not being there, is the crime. And to me, this is ridiculous, absurd, and flies into the face of what people purport to say they believe in when they talk about equality. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. If you like the video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on the social medias, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about the Department of Justice going after another police department. Till next time.